Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Crystal Nolan, and I'm an instructional technology facilitator at Lakeland Schools for 5th through 8th grades. I help students and teachers understand how to utilize technology in their classrooms to create resources, engaging learning, and to make their lives easier and tasks simpler. Our session today is called How Sweet It Is to Use Google. I know Google calls it the workspace now, but Google Suite just matches with the theme so much better. So that's what we're going to call it today. If you visit this link, you will be taken to a Google Doc where you can click through, access the presentation link, and take notes about the different items that we talk about together today. I find that I love having something to take notes on while I'm watching because I feel like I don't remember what I want to remember later. And as I'm watching somebody tell me about a new tool or an idea, my brain thinks of ideas too, and I want somewhere to put them. So if you don't already have somewhere you're taking notes, please feel free to use this doc. Now, why are we talking about this today? In education, a lot of programs, supplemental programs, and companies are having to raise their prices, and our schools may not be able to keep up. I think it's very important to learn how to use fewer tools to accomplish what it is we want to accomplish for the situation that may happen to where that's the only choice we have. I love having incredible resources for my educators, but I can't guarantee those will always be there because I can't guarantee the funding will always be there. So I try to teach them how to use Google Workspace, which is what we use in my school, to create some of the resources that they create in other places. Now, you may not be a Google school, we are, but if you're not, I hope that by watching this, you will gain ideas and insights into how you can use whatever tool or workspace you already have to learn more about how to use their version of items to accomplish the same goal. Let's get started. Now, first, we're going to look at Google Slides. There are so many great tools in Google Slides that we may not know about or may not have utilized yet. So let's start talking about some of them. All right, I do need to tell you a little backstory about my character here. This is Evangeline. She is an Adobe Express Animate Me character, and this was a lesson I did with students to record a character talking about the slide, and they insert it into the slide so that it was like they were giving a presentation, but they weren't actually standing up in front of the class and doing it. And so this was Evangeline. I created Evangeline, and they speak to me in Evangeline's voice now. So here's a little Evangeline for you. Oops, I paused her.
Hey there, I'm Evangeline, and I wanted to go to Harry Potter World there in that Universal Studios, but I feel like I might have gotten on the wrong airplane, and I don't quite know where I am. So if anybody could tell me what this location right here is, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Sincerely, Evangeline.
So when I see students in the hallway now, they say, I appreciate you, Miss Nolan. But this was a great way to use Google Slides for student presentations. Our students don't have access to Canva, and they don't have access to other items. So we use Google Slides a lot for them to create things. So we have to find ways to make them a little bit more engaging. Now, let's talk about a couple things that you can do. One thing that you may not realize is in Google Slides that I always tell people, especially for our students, since they are having to use this to create things like graphics and posters, you can change the size of the Google slide. So if we go to page setup under file and we change it to custom and we pick something like 8.5 or 8.5 by 10. I always get this wrong, by the way. And I apply, it does change the size of the slide. Now it will change all of them. You can't have different size slides in the same presentation. But we use this for students to create booklets, posters, and other visual graphics, which graphics are visual, so that didn't make a lot of sense. But this enables them to have that graphic creation similarity. And so we teach them that. Now, something else that's really beneficial I am going to add a new slide in. And something else, if you didn't know, Google Slides has a lot of really awesome new templates. So definitely check that out. And it can be found right here by templates. I am going to show you this very quickly. It's such a great new feature. You can access it over here, but also you can go to Insert and they have something new called building blocks. I love these. Building blocks are pre-made graphics and visuals that you just insert text into. So for example, if I click headlines, oh, look how cool this is. And I didn't even have to make it. So these are great pieces of graphics and art. That phrase wasn't great, but you can insert into your slides to take some of the work off of your plate of creating things from scratch, and students as well. Now I am going to insert a text box. Please remember that a lot of screen readers have trouble reading visuals or screenshots, but they don't have a lot of trouble reading text. And the next thing I'm going to show you is a translation feature that is excellent, and it's a free extension. There is a paid version, but this extension is free, and I've used it so many times for students. And it is called Slides to Spanish. Slides to Spanish is basically an extension that will translate your entire Google slideshow, or at least the text that's on it, into a plethora of different languages. So when I click Translate to Spanish, it is going to pull it up. And I can pick a language to translate. Now, these are just the quick languages, which means those are the ones that I use most often. But if I choose other languages, there are so many and it's so fantastic. But I am going to pick Spanish and I'm going to click Translate. And what happens is it translates the entire slideshow for me, which is great to make sure students have access to materials and for teachers not to have to copy and paste into Google Translate like I used to do a lot. So I'm going to click Open Slides. And of course, you do want to check it, but there it is. Right there. I think that is so great and such a fantastic resource to make sure that we can provide students with what they need, but also to not add too much to a teacher's already just overflowing plate. Another extension, we love Stickity for slides. We do have the free versions of these extensions as well. Stickity for slides is great. They're stickers. They're essentially stickers for your Google Slides, and they look a lot better than just finding an image and uploading it. So for example, attention getters. If you're creating a slideshow for students, you can insert the stickers from Stickity to make sure that you're drawing their attention to the proper pieces that you want them to be able to focus on. And there it is. There's my arrow. Ta-da! And so they're just fun little stickers that you can use. Something else I want to make sure you remember. Don't forget that Google Slides does have diagrams, tables, and charts. So students can insert data straight into Google Slides and even from a Google Sheet. So if they keep data on the Google Sheet, they can create a graph to put in a slide. They're using multiple tools, but they're getting the experience with those as well. And on diagram, our favorite has been the timeline, because a lot of our history teachers want students to create timelines, but our students don't have access to a lot of the timeline making websites because they're not secure. And so they use Google Slides to do that, or Google Sheets. Something else I want to tell you about. I don't know if you're like my district, but we as teachers are allowed to access YouTube, but our students aren't. So that means they can't go to YouTube and watch videos, or if we post a video, they aren't able to actually view that. And this is how we make it work. So I'm going to go to YouTube and I'm going to find a video. Now, I watch a lot of weather, so let's just go ahead and say that. But I'm going to use this Fractions for Kids as an example. I'm going to copy this link right here. And when I go back over to my Google Slides, I'm going to click Insert Video, and I will paste my YouTube link and press my enter button. Insert, and now what happens is when students watch this in slideshow mode, they can watch the video because it's no longer on the YouTube website. It's actually an embedded item in Google Slides. So a lot of our teachers will hyperlink and create resource slide decks for students to watch for review for exams. And we love this. And sometimes they'll add questions underneath the video. So they'll have the video at the top and type their questions at the bottom. So I hope that gave you a little bit more information about Google Slides. And just to mention, they can use these to create flashcards. We don't have access to Quizlet, so our students use these to create their own study flashcards. And when they put it in slideshow mode, they just click the arrows and they study, and they really do like it. And something else I want to show you or tell you about is if you're in slideshow mode, I'm going to talk through these because it's going to probably take my face away. When I'm presenting, did you know you can click the W button on your keyboard and it will create a white screen? Click the B on your keyboard and it will create a dark screen. So instead of having to consistently freeze your screen on a projector, you could just use those keyboard shortcuts. It's one of those things where I thought, as a tech person, I feel like I should know that, but I didn't. And now that I do, I'm so excited about it. So let's talk about, we're going to go ahead and move to Google Forms. So Google Forms, so many possibilities. And I'm going to make sure I'm still recording because last time I started this video and I got about 30 minutes in and realized I wasn't. So I just want to make sure that I am. So let's hop over to Google Forms and let's talk a little bit about our forms. I'm going to choose this one, a blank slate, so to speak. And I want to start by talking to you about 2 add-ons that are going to change your life with Google Forms. The first of which is Form Limiter. So you know that you can turn off responses, but do we always remember to do that? I can write it down in about 20 different planners and I'll still forget to close a form, especially if I want maybe 15 volunteers, 20 volunteers, and then I forget to close the form and I get 75 and I have to send the dreaded, "I'm sorry, we don't need you" email. The Form Limiter add-on will allow you to choose after this many people fill out this form, close it, or with date and time. And you don't have to remember to go back and do it. So when I click Form Limiter, I click Set Limit, and I can choose the limit either by the number of form responses or the date and time. So if I clicked number of form responses, I don't want to accept any more after 25. And I can choose the message that goes to people when they try to fill out the form and they can't. And when I save and enable, I don't have to worry about that again. The form is going to close on its own. The other great extension is Choice Eliminator Lite. What this does, and this will say, "Take note." Essentially what this is saying is if you don't use a drop-down type question format, it's not going to work well. And if there are 2 people on the form at the exact same time and they pick the same choice and they click submit at the exact same moment, this is also not going to work as planned. But otherwise, it's a great way to set up things like parent-teacher conference appointments, volunteer opportunities. So I would pick the question. So I need to add a drop-down menu question. But once I add the drop-down menu question, and we're going to do that just so you can see what that looks like. So on Google Forms, I know I keep darkening out my face a little bit. I'm just going to move over here now. There we go. That was the wrong way. I'm going to minimize this for a second, and I'm going to add a question, and I'm going to make sure it is drop-down. And I'm just going to put time right here, and I'm going to put 2, 3, and 4. So now when I go to Choice Eliminator Lite, I'm going to close and reopen it because I think I confused it because I added a question while it was already open. And it will remind you every time. So I'm going to pick this time question and I'm going to pick Eliminate Choices. And so essentially what it does is once one is chosen, it will eliminate it. So if you want maybe 3 people in the same time slot, put that 3 times. And once somebody picks one, it'll eliminate it for anybody else that fills out that form. And I thought that was so incredibly handy and beneficial. Now, let's talk about how do people get those really cool escape room questions? Well, here's how. we're going to add, here's a great example. The 3 dots are magic. If you didn't know this, those 3 dots on Google Forms are magic. When I click the 3 dots, I do want to tell you about description. Description's fantastic. If you like to use Google Sheets to look at your data, let me tell you how to clean it up and not have the one column that goes on for like 20 miles. If you use description, make it very short right here and add your details here. Life changer. But if I click response validation, that's where, unless the student types the word or the number that I'm looking for, it will not let them continue. So I can pick length or regular expression, a minimum or maximum character count, but I do have paragraph here. So if I change that to short answer, I do get more options. I get number or text. I could choose equal to, and then I can type a number. That way, if the student doesn't type 23, they can't go on to the next question or they can't submit the form. But make sure you do type a custom error text, because if you don't, the question won't work. I learned this when I made an escape room and I was in the classroom and students were taking the escape or completing the escape room. And all the hands went up at once and they said, Miss Nolan, it's not working. And that's how I found out that, this is what you have to do. So I often will type something like try again, or I'll give them a little, I promise I taught ELA. I give them a little hint to help them out and give them something to think about. Now, here's something about Google Forms you may or may not know. You can treat Google Forms much like a choose your own adventure. Meaning, I love to use Google Forms to give students some review. And how that's done is we start with our ice cream sandwich and we make sections and we name those sections what we want. So for example, fractions 1 might be my fraction review. If a student answers a couple questions incorrectly, I might want them to go here and do a little review. My fractions 2 is my section that's a little bit more challenging. So if a student answers 2 questions correctly, I might want them to have a few more challenging problems. How do I do that? I make my sections first. Then I add in my questions. So I like to start with a couple questions on this first page right here before all of the other sections. And if it's multiple choice, here's what I do. It's the magic 3 dots again. I click my 3 dots and I go to section based on answer. And then I can choose what section they go to. So if this was the incorrect answer and I wanted students to have a review, I would send them to fractions 1 for a review. But if this was correct and I wanted them to be challenged, I would go to fractions 2. So 2 students can be working on the same Google form and be answering different questions. Now, this does take a little bit of work up front, but after that's done, it's so worth it to have this from year to year and have the ability for students to focus on what it is that they need to focus on. So that is where we're going to stop with Google Forms. Now, what we're going to go to next is Google Docs and Draw. I know this may not sound exciting, but Google Docs and Google Draw have so many amazing features that you may not know about. Again, life-changing. It's super sweet. I'm going to pretend I heard you laughing because that was funny. That was funny-ish. So let's start with this doc. This is what we use for students to work through some of the Chromebook problems on their own. But I do want to show you some really cool new features of Google Docs that you may not know that are there. Google Tabs are fantastic. Why? What can they be used for? Writing revisions. Students can add different tabs for different versions of an essay, and that way they don't have 6 different documents in Google Drive. Also, if you're studying a certain unit, students can have a different tab for each of the topics and have a semester's worth of unit notes in one doc. Again, so they don't have 30 different docs in their Google Drive. So think of tabs being used that way. Next, I love to use the Chrome extension Brisk with Google Docs and basically any and all Google tools. What is it? Well, this one you'll need to go to the Chrome Web Store to find, but here's Brisk. Now, if I have a doc with text or anything else, I can create other resources and it's great. So let's try it out. I'm going to click my Brisk option. And I'm going to click Create. Now, I do have the free educator plan, but I still think it's enough. It's beyond enough. I can actually create a quiz that's a Google form from what's on this doc. I can also create, as you can see, several different items, including a Google Slides presentation. And my teacher's favorite, depth of knowledge questions. We're always trying to think of all those different questions that we could ask, and we may not always have some that we can think of off the top of our heads. So what I'm going to do is I've chosen depth of knowledge questions. English is the language. I can even upload files. I'm going to give it instructions. I can map and match standards. And I'm going to pick maybe 9th grade. And I'm going to click brisket. Add in an extra syllable in there. And it is going to create questions. Look at all these questions. These are great because they vary based on the depth of knowledge. So it gives me an activity idea, learning objectives. So for example, a depth of knowledge 4 says, research and explain the long-term impacts of poor digital device maintenance. And then I go up here to recall and it says, what does power cycling mean? This is fantastic. This could be great for a text or anything else that you're using. So we're going to go ahead and delete these. And I want to show you now how Brisk can be used to create a review Google form. So if I click quiz, I get to decide the grade, the types of questions, how many questions, cover the material on this document. And I can choose doc or form. I like to use a form just because of the data I can get from it. And it's going to create a completely editable Google form. You have to add the name question though. Again, I learned that from not doing it, but make sure you add somewhere they can put their name. But there it is. And it saves it to my Google Drive. So that's how Brisket can be used with the doc. Now, here's something else I want to show you that I think is amazing. And I'm not going to use this doc because my students can currently see this, and I think they'd get a little bit too much joy out of seeing my face. But let's go here to where we have Google Docs and Draw. So for a lot of teachers, note-taking and annotating on top of photos, we've always been trying to find a program that will do this or something that students can use. We can do that right in Google Docs. How do we do that? I'll show you. I'm imagining this as me creating a template, and then I'm going to have students either make a copy of this or get a copy of it from Google Classroom or Schoology. I'm going to click Insert, and I'm going to go and hover over Drawing and New. This is Google Draw, essentially, right here that we're making. I can choose a photo, so a map, a graph, an image that students need to circle on top of. For demonstrations today, I will be taking my photo. And we're going to insert that photo. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to resize and just click Save and Close. So when students receive this, what they'll do is they'll double click on the image and they can edit it. So students will then be able to come in here and draw on the photo, add in shapes, maybe to identify certain parts of the photo. But once they click Save and Close, their photo's annotated on top of. That to me has so many possibilities and saves a lot of looking for an outside tool or an extra tool to do this and do that. When students can have that image they can edit and then have all their notes underneath. It's in one spot. They can go back and edit it again. And you're not trying to figure out how are they going to annotate on top of this photo. They have to do that in this website and then do that here. It's all right here. And that's one of my favorite things about Docs. There are so many others, but that's been one of my favorite ways to use it lately. Let's check our time. Woo, we're almost there. So one thing about Docs too, don't forget about pageless mode. What is pageless mode, you say? I'll show you. So if I were to click File, Page Setup, and choose pageless mode, Pageless mode takes away a lot of those extras. And now what I can do is I can insert a cover image. Think of this like a Google form. I can choose from stock images or make my own. And essentially what this is it's adding in a very, oh, that looks delicious, a very fancy header photo. And something else that's really, really cool about Google Docs, if you didn't know this. I am going to take it off pageless mode. That way you don't have trouble filling it in if you need to. What I can do is if I go to my text and I choose a heading, and I go beneath it and I make notes. Did you know that when you hover beside the heading, and this does need to be in pageless mode. So let's go back. What happens is I get a caret and I can collapse the notes. So think about how great this would be for lots and lots of information, maybe back to school information or a syllabus for students. They can expand that information because for a lot of us, a lot of information in front of us at one time is so overwhelming that we may not read it all. So if we can collapse, kind of like chunking, if we can collapse, we read it so much more easily. I love talking about these things. So one of the last topics we're going to look at today, because I feel like I've given you a lot of information and hopefully valuable information, is a little bit about Google AI. So I don't want to spend too long on this because we all have differing opinions about AI, but what I hope to approach it as is how can AI help you have a simpler day and whittle away at your tasks? I want to first start by showing you something called Notebook LM. Notebook LM is free to use up to a certain point, but what is Notebook LM? Notebook LM is like a digital notebook where you can upload lots and lots of different resources, up to 50 with the free version, including videos, slideshows, PDFs, Google Documents. So it will look like this, and I can upload these types of sources when I go to make a notebook. And some of my teachers have used it. They've uploaded their Google slideshows from an entire unit, their study guides, the student notes, and essentially what it is, here I can ask a question. Do we learn about cells? So instead of searching a document multiple times over and over and going through tons of pages, it's going to find that information in my resources. It's not asking the internet. It's not asking Google search. It's asking my content that I uploaded. Unless I put a link in there, then it's asking the internet. But it's searching my information. So this would be great for brand new teachers where they have a lot of stuff they have to learn. But right here, it's breaking it down in 7th grade, and it tells me this is what you cover. And if I hover over the number, it shows me exactly where in that document it pulled it from. But my teacher's favorite options are the deep dive, where it essentially creates a podcast covering the information here, and it sounds so real. And they love using the study guide feature because it can create a study guide for an entire unit of material just like this. They also love the briefing doc. And I'll be honest, the briefing doc is probably my personal favorite because it also includes vocabulary. So let's take a look at our study guide. Right here, quiz, essay questions, vocabulary. So fantastic. So let's go back and let's make a briefing doc. But my teachers love to use Notebook LM to create study guides and materials, and they feel a lot more comfortable using this because it's coming from things that they have created. So it's not something that of course you need to look over it, but it's something that's pulling from what they already made. It's just making their lives simpler. So here's the briefing document, main themes, ideas and facts, key quotes, and I love how it pulls out that key information. It's a great way to teach summary and all kinds of other topics. But I can't wait to use Notebook LM next year for my new teachers that come in and upload things like expectations, technology program help, and they can just go here and ask a question when they need it if we're not readily available. I love this. Something else I love is using Gemini and Google Sites together. So let me explain. I'm going to go find a Google site that I made. You might ask, Miss Nolan, why didn't you have these tabs already open? I don't have a great answer for that. But what I did to help my teachers is a lot of sites are blocked in our district. And so I wanted to make them some great review games. And I learned about this at a Google PLC. So I would click on Canvas and I asked, can you create an embed code for a Google site that is a game reviewing cell structure for 7th grade? And so what this is going to do is tell me about a code. Now, if I word it correctly, it's going to give me a code. I didn't word it correctly. But what happens is when I do that, I go over here and I click embed and I copy and paste that code and it's review games. And this then becomes interactive for students. So it made these. And these are actually quizzes that students can take. So we're going to look at one. I couldn't remember where to go. So when students see it, they're actually interacting with this game. And of course, I go through and play each one just to make sure it's accurate to what I want them to learn. But it keeps them here, and there's no ads, there are no random chat or comment rooms that they might get into and be exposed to something dangerous that they don't need, or share information they don't need to share. So this is great. But I start with Gemini, and I ask Gemini to create the code for me. I'm so sorry about continually doing that to that. So I didn't get the specifics of the game itself, which is part of the problem and why it's saying, why would you not do that? So let me find one that there we go. So I did, let me think of how I worded this so that it worked. And let's show you again. Can I have an embed code for a Google site that reviews theme in a fictional text? So I needed more details, as we often do with AI when we're trying to use it. So it is going to go over here and create the code. So when I click code, I can see that it's actually building the code. And then I preview it, and here's all my tabs, all my desktops. Here is my game. And then I get the code, I copy it, I go to my Google site and I embed it. And students have safe games to play. I absolutely love this. Don't forget about the Google tools that are already AI. If you have students that have trouble thinking of ideas and brainstorming, let them use the dictation feature. Let them use under tools, voice typing. Let them talk it out and then go back and type it later. I hope that together you have learned some new ways to use the features of Google that maybe you didn't before. I hope that your brain has said, oh, wow, I could use this and it's going to make things so much easier. That's what I want for you. I hope that you learn to use technology as a true tool. And I like to reference it as I'm not going to take and carry a hammer around with me everywhere because a hammer is not going to fix every problem that I have. I can't use the same tool for every problem that I have. I have to be ready with different ones. So I hope that technology is used as a tool and that you remember that you are the center of everything and you are the one using technology to help you. And I hope that today you've learned more. Please feel free to email me if you'd like to talk or have any questions at all. Thank you so much for watching today.